The new Ultimate Marvel Universe and the brand new Absolute DC Universe comic lines are actually big ways that these two comic book companies have been deciding to add new jumping on points for fans and future fans for their comic books, and to try and get people to give these new series a try and view these iconic heroes in various different matters. However, with Absolute DC coming out towards the tail end of 2024, while Ultimate Marvel had been running for almost a year at that point, I know there were some people that were acting like DC was copying Marvel. Now, in the instance that Marvel and DC kind of take from each other in multiple different avenues for characters and designs, that's been a known fact for years. Not every superhero or fantasy concept will always be 100% original, especially nowadays. But no, Absolute DC is not DC's own way of ripping off Marvel. That's something that I know there are going to be people out there that are going to try and say now with Absolute DC coming out in full force. These are two very not only different universes, conceived in very different matters, but they're also planned out and set up in very different ways that make them each unique from each other and make them all very unique and interesting reads for fans depending on what book you end up picking up from either franchise. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about the key differences between Ultimate Marvel and Absolute DC and how that plays to the strengths of what the writers and the people in charge of these comic book companies are thinking in terms of bringing out these brand new universes. Before we jump into this, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And also thank you for 100 subscribers. That was a lot quicker than I thought we were going to get that many subscribers based off the very few videos I have made so far, but already a decent milestone for a brand new channel, so I very much appreciate the help and support. And now on with the video. So Absolute DC and Ultimate Marvel, on the surface, as I said, seem like very similar things. Both comic book brands want to start launching brand new jumping on points for readers in brand new universes created through various events that have occurred in the comic books. However, as we essentially know, these universes were created essentially in canon in very different ways. For Ultimate Marvel, it was created by the maker, the evil Reed Richards from the original Ultimate Universe from the comics in the early to mid 2000s, that ended up going back in time to a parallel universe and altering things to change it so multiple superheroes would not become superheroes, as well as to alter the fates of specific characters and create his own evil council that would shape and control the world from the shadows. And with Absolute DC, that universe was created during the DC All-In #1 issue, where Darkseid, after fusing with the Spectre with a machine that he created, wanted to break free from the shackles of their main universe, of even their main multiverse, to essentially become his own true god in essence, while also escaping this bizarre cycle that he was in within the canon of DC Comics. And even basically soloed the entirety of the Justice League in that instance before completely evaporating and seemingly being destroyed. But in turn, he managed to use his very essence, his energy, and his ego to reshape an entire universe, a brand new infant universe, and had it accelerate in time to a more so modern day setting with multiple different changes to it at its core during its creation and setup, making Darkseid the core of that brand new absolute universe, as he is essentially, in a sense, a term of God, deity in the truest sense of the word in that universe, and is leading into some big events that will occur at some point with the future All-In edition to give us that storyline conclusion. And based off of what I said, these two universes were created by very threatening villains, but in varying different circumstances. One from some grand cosmic level scheme, the other through systematically taking out specific heroes and preventing specific events from happening in the past and in the shadows through multiple years, creating his ideal world where he ruled supreme. And so on the surface, upon the creation of these new universes, could be similar circumstances. They couldn't be more different in the execution and setup. But what makes Absolute DC and Ultimate Marvel so vastly different is how these universes are being explored. Starting off with Ultimate Marvel, this universe is building up to a wide-scale, massive event where the Maker will be unsealed from his city, as during the Ultimate Invasion event that kickstarted the Ultimate Universe, he was sealed within there for 2 years in world time. And with specific titles, we end up jumping with each issue about a month towards that inevitable conclusion, as the main title that advances this is the main plot of this entire universe, being the Ultimates, that universe's version of the Avengers. They, in every single issue, not only try and gain more allies, but take the fight to the Maker's Council and try and undermine them. And at the end of every single issue, it says how many months or how long is left until the Maker is set free. And in the first launching off point for the Ultimate Marvel Universe, being obviously Ultimate Spider-Man, that one ends and gives us a lot more issues with the month system. Every single issue takes place after a specific month. One issue takes place within a certain month, and so there is a month-long progression for the most part within specific issues. But with those in particular, and as we move on with like Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate X-Men, we see that good stretches of time end up passing along within each and every single issue, as we eventually build up to the event that is going to be the Maker's Revival. And through the stories being told with each of these different titles, outside of Ultimate X-Men, we actually get the anticipation, that sense of foreboding when the Maker makes his return. And in the Ultimates issue 8, we actually get the Ultimate Guardians of the Galaxy introducing that essentially future versions from a far off future of what that future of that world would have been like, and they come back to try and get America and essentially say that they are destined to lose in this bizarre timeline that was created by the Maker. And so we have that ticking clock and that premonition over our heads for the rest of these books to see how this will happen and how our heroes will avoid that outcome and change things for the better. Every book outside of X-Men, for now at least, is building up to that inevitable event, that epic conclusion for this 2-year-long epic story arc. And based on where we're going right now, either by the end of 2025 or the beginning of 2026, the Maker will make his return, and we will have, at least for the time being, our main heroes for that inevitable fight. And we'll have a lot of these ongoing character arcs and storylines that have been set up and we've been following so far in all those books to be concluded by the end of 2025 or early 2026, when we get that return of the Maker and have that final confrontation. Now, obviously, the universe will expand from there, and we'll have more unique and creative stories with this brand new and unique universe, with things being vastly different from the mainline comic continuity. So there's a lot to go with that, but with the Ultimate Universe, they are building up to a story that is interconnected through all of their books, despite their own individual storylines focusing on their own characters. We have had that ticking clock from the very beginning of this new continuity that we are building up for and are eagerly anticipating when this will drop, for that big climactic storyline to see if things will actually change and that dark future will be averted. That is what Ultimate Marvel is doing from their creation and throughout the course of all of these books. We have that through line through all of them, making that large build up for an epic conclusion. But what about Absolute DC? What is different about that universe, that comic book line, in difference and stark contrast to Ultimate Marvel? Well, as I said, the creation was done from Darkseid. The universe of Absolute DC is created through Darkseid energy, and with that creation of this universe, essentially the main thing is that hope, optimism, and heroism, and even empathy and all that stuff is the underdog. It is far less of a big source of change and a core aspect of this universe, where now our heroes are at an even worse and bigger disadvantage than they would normally be in within this brand new universe. Bruce Wayne doesn't have all of his money and insane gadgets and all the training he's done throughout the world. Superman seemingly wasn't raised by the Kents at a young age to have that sense of humanity built upon him in a sense of who he is, from that set of him being a baby, growing up as a human, and learning to use his powers to be a beacon of hope for others. Wonder Woman was raised in hell and was raised by the sorcerer Cersei, who would have been one of her main antagonists, and now she knows witchcraft and magic and has a skeleton Pegasus that breathes fire, and now she fights hellbeasts. Our core Trinity has had major changes to their origin stories that alter what they are, but at their core, they're still, just like with the other universe, have essentially the same characters with different upbringings and different aspects to them that will have them built up to who they will inevitably become. But with the three main titles, Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman, and Absolute Wonder Woman, we are stuck in their own individual story arcs, each of them having a 5-issue opening story arc that is about to be concluded for all three of them very soon, and we're still just fresh within this new universe, and we're getting 3 more titles on the way in 2025 with Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Flash, and Absolute Martian Manhunter. But within these comics, we are focusing squarely on our main Trinity in their own individual stories that each will build out the worlds in their own bubble rivals to an extent. Batman is cleaning up Gotham from the party animals and essentially gonna prepare for the onslaught of Black Mask and potentially his version of the Joker. So we'll get his rogues gallery being set up and all that. He has a much bigger connection to the characters that will become his rogues. Gotham is even worse, at least from what we can tell, than it would normally be. Superman is on the run from a giant corporation that seemingly has Brainiac running it, and who knows, Lex Luthor might be part of it also, while trying to help people and trying to lay low. He's constantly on the run and is still trying to figure things out, as he was more recently brought onto Earth after the destruction of Krypton, and we're getting that history of how Krypton was destroyed and the significance of his birth parents throughout his early childhood and life. Wonder Woman right now, we're seeing how she was brought up, but also the literal hell beasts that she is fighting to try and save people right now in the city on Earth. And outside of these specific storylines that they're currently in, and at least the build-up and world building that each of them are doing individually, we aren't building up, at least not yet, to an ongoing narrative that is feeding into each other. We have the looming threat of Darkseid in that final 2-page spread of DC's All In, where Booster Gold faces down a little godlike Darkseid staring down on him from a red sky with his own corrupted legion of superheroes, and that's most likely where this absolute event is gonna end up leading. The DC All In will be the main event that we'll end up seeing come in culmination at some point later down the future, after we've built up this new absolute universe with all these new versions of our favorite characters and even new characters. But for right now, we're focusing on developing the individual characters, their worlds, and supporting casts individually, building them up first and those sides of the world before they most likely inevitably collide into each other and we see things build from there. And that is the biggest difference between these two universes. While in conception, they are relatively similar in how they were brought about in canon, and chances are DC already had this planned out before Ultimate Marvel released their first issues and all that, and were getting things set up. They had the same idea. Both companies had roughly the same idea, but are approaching it in vastly different ways. Ultimate Marvel is using each of their titles to build up this ongoing narrative for an inevitable conclusion for this first main storyline, this new universe for our characters. While Absolute DC is taking its time by building out each of the characters, their worlds, their settings individually to have us fully discover who these characters are in their own manner before we inevitably have them collide and progress the ongoing storyline that could end up culminating in what we saw at the end of All In issue 1 with Darkseid and Booster Gold and how that comes to be. Absolute DC is taking its time to build things out properly individually with the titles they have currently, while Ultimate Marvel is building up this grand epic storyline from the very beginning while simultaneously building up these individual aspects for their characters and parts of the world, but the ongoing storyline and narrative is the through line for all of their books. So yeah, at the end of the day, Absolute DC is keeping things relatively small scale to start things out by fleshing out these individual pieces and characters, while Ultimate Marvel is setting things up and developing them in the way to build up to their inevitable conclusion for this massive event they built up since the conception of this new Ultimate Universe. And all we gotta wait for and see is how these events and how these titles end up working out towards the end. Absolute DC has more time to build things out than Ultimate Marvel since they gave themselves a literal ticking clock to build things up, and Absolute DC can take their time a bit more to flesh things out for the time being, while Ultimate Marvel has to keep things within a certain time frame to build up their stories. But based on what we've seen from all of these issues and titles so far individually from these different comic book runs, they know what they're doing. The writers, the artists, the editors-in-chiefs, everybody knows what they're doing and they know what they're planning to build things up for, and I have full confidence that both of these lines will be amazing reads. There are definitely different tones for Marvel and DC depending on the book, but DC does have a bit of that darker edge to it to an extent, so you might want to go for that if you want a bit more of a darker, more serious story, but Ultimate Marvel still keeps that seriousness while keeping the usual campiness of what Marvel is and that hopeful, optimistic attitude. So it all just depends on your preference on which one you want more. I like both, and I think they're both approaching things in very interesting and very great ways that I can really sink my teeth into. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you and which side you just feel more fun reading. Let me know in the comment section down below which of these two universes you prefer so far. Obviously, Absolute DC still has more time to give you a proper look at it, but which one are you enjoying reading every single month, and what's your favorite title from each? Let me know in the comment section down below, and if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now, with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.